An elderly man, Henry, risked his own life to save a drowning wolf from a frozen lake. You won't believe how the wolf later repaid the kind man. Henry lived all alone in the wilderness. Every winter, he told himself that he was getting too old for such a harsh life far from civilization. He really enjoyed watching wildlife and feeling part of it, but over the years, the cold winters became more and more difficult for him. The frosty wind pierced through even the old man's warm fur clothing. He dreamed of just sitting by the fireplace, drinking hot sweet tea, and not fishing on a frozen lake in the bitter cold. But there was no choice. It was necessary to stock up on fish for the entire coming winter. One day in December, Henry went fishing as usual. When he reached the lake through the winter forest, he noticed a huge wolf approaching the shore in the distance. The animal was far enough away that the old man did not feel in danger and could simply admire this magnificent predator. Henry could tell from the wolf's behavior that it was still quite young and inexperienced. The wolf stepped onto the lake ice to quench its thirst, unaware of the deadly risk it was taking. A mature wolf would never have dared to step on the thin, not yet completely frozen ice. But this young and inexperienced predator, full of strength and fearlessness, did not notice the danger until the fragile ice cracked under his weight. There was a deafening crash, and the wolf fell into the icy water. The poor animal tried to get free, but its heavy, shaggy skin quickly got wet. Each time it tried to climb out, the thin layer of ice broke under its weight, preventing the animal from reaching the surface. The wolf floundered desperately in the icy water, weakening and freezing with every wasted minute. Henry could no longer bear to watch this torment. He dropped his fishing gear and ran to the wolf, taking with him a brand new gun, a recent gift from his son, just in case. The son was worried about his elderly father living alone in the forest and, for safety, had given him a weapon. Henry understood perfectly well that going out on thin, fragile ice was very dangerous. So he assessed which side had the thickest ice and carefully crawled from there toward the animal in trouble. Slowly reaching the wolf, the man gently grabbed its paws and pulled it toward him. Fortunately, the ice held both of them, and the predator seemed to sense that the man wanted to help and did not resist. After a few minutes, which seemed like an eternity to Henry, he was finally able to pull the wolf ashore. The man sighed with relief, but the wolf remained lying in the snow. Due to hypothermia and severe weakness, it could not even stand on its paws. Henry realized that abandoning the predator in the forest now would mean almost certain death for the animal. So, the man gathered the rest of his strength and dragged the predator to his cabin in the woods. There, Henry immediately lit a fire in the fireplace and dragged the wolf closer so it could finally warm up. When the predator came to his senses, the man gave him something to drink and fed him the fish he had caught. The wolf did not show any signs of aggression, and his gaze showed gratitude to his savior. Soon the predator fell asleep, and Henry followed. When the man woke up the next morning, the wolf was nowhere to be found. The door of the house was ajar, and on the floor, there were only scratches from claws and scraps of grey fur, a reminder of the night guest. This made Henry smile. It meant that his efforts were not in vain, and that the wolf had completely recovered after yesterday's misfortune. A few days later, Henry witnessed an absolutely incredible sight. He had left the house to get firewood when he suddenly noticed, in the distance, a whole pack of grey wolves rushing along the edge of the forest. One of the wolves suddenly stopped and looked straight at the man. Henry immediately recognized the predator he had recently saved. This meant that the warmed and fed animal had safely found its native pack. Several months passed and spring arrived. His son and teenage grandson came from the city to visit the lonely forest recluse. His relatives often begged their grandfather to leave the dangerous life of a hermit and move to the city. But Henry loved the solitary life, surrounded by wilderness. At the same time, he was now incredibly glad to have the opportunity to show his forest home to his family. A couple of days later, the family went fishing at a small river not far from the forest cabin. The boy ran along the shore, enjoying the beauty of spring, while Henry and his son were fishing. At some point, the grandfather lost sight of the teenager. When he finally spotted him, he was stupefied with horror. The grandson was standing right at the riverbank, and from the nearby thickets, a huge brown bear was inexorably approaching. Its menacing appearance inspired both awe and fear. The shaggy giant, just awakened from its winter hibernation, had been attracted by the smell of fresh fish and had come to the riverbank, right up to the child. The bear was hungry after a long winter and was now looking at its prey with a carnivorous gaze. The boy was petrified with fear, unable to even move. The adults were too far away to do anything. It was absolutely pointless to shoot a gun from such a distance. Henry and his son tried to drive the predator away by shouting loudly, hoping to divert his attention, but it was useless. The bear understood perfectly well that they were too far away to pose any threat. He remained focused on the small prey standing just a few dozen feet away. The boy, overcoming his primal fear, threw his small fish out of his hands, a pitiful handout for such a giant. The bear immediately swallowed the fish and then stared at the child again. Now that the smell of fresh fish had whetted the wild beast's appetite, it was clear that he was not going anywhere. Henry rushed toward his grandson with all his might, hoping to somehow distract the predator's attention, even if it cost him his life. But to his horror, Henry realized he was too late. The distance was too great. The man only waved his arms and screamed desperately, realizing the futility of his efforts. Suddenly, a large grey wolf jumped out of the nearest thicket and rushed toward the bear. It was the same grey predator whose life Henry had saved. The wolf stood between the boy and the bear, spreading his paws wide and growling threateningly at the hungry beast. The bear tried to step forward toward the prey, but the wolf did not retreat a single step, continuing to growl menacingly. However, the bear soon noticed several more wolves appearing in the bushes nearby, which meant a serious fight lay ahead if he persisted. Deciding to find more accessible prey, the bear retreated and soon disappeared into the thicket of the forest. The wolf looked at Henry and his son as they ran up, then howled loudly, giving his pack a subtle signal not to touch the people on the shore, people under his protection. After making sure that the bear would not return, the wolf turned and followed his pack into the forest. 3 people stood on the shore for a long time, unable to believe in their miraculous salvation. After this incident, Henry confidently told his son that he would never return to the city again. He would forever live in the forest, for wild nature and its noble inhabitants were much closer to him than the unpredictable and often cruel people of the world.